Hi, my name is Rob Wakely. I'm the chief of Bonner County EMS in North Idaho. And the following video was originally done just for our workers in our dispatch center. And we've expanded the audience to include not only the EMTs and paramedics within Bonner County EMS, but also our system partners in Bonner County. And what we're addressing here is stress reaction experienced by first responders, and that would include firefighters as well as EMTs, paramedics, and police officers. Prior to joining Bonner County EMS, I was a licensed professional counselor in Austin, Texas, and I have a master's degree in counseling. And during that time, when I was in Texas, I worked for the Travis County Mental Health Authority, which is where Austin is located. And I worked quite a bit with patients that were dealing with experiencing trauma. And in particular, I worked quite a bit with emergency responders that were having difficulty processing experiences that they had in both particular cases and experiences that they had cumulatively over time. So today I'm going to talk about the kinds of typical reactions that you might have that are perfectly normal and that you can expect to go away with time, and the kinds of reactions that really might indicate that you might want to get outside help in order to deal with them. So I hope everyone that looks at this gets something out of it. Thank you. Talk about stress reaction, acute stress reaction, and the reason I want to talk about that is that you and I share experiences with other people in emergency services like firefighters and police officers, search and rescue personnel. We all share traumatic experiences, and you do not have to be on scene to have a traumatic experience affect you profoundly. In fact, there's the argument that your job in particular is so much more difficult because you have people reaching out to you in crisis, and they're counting on you is to be their connection to the emergency services that they need to potentially save their life. And that's a tremendous weight of responsibility on your shoulders. And as much as you'd like to jump up, grab your car keys, and drive to the person and help correct the situation, you know that you can't do that. And it becomes, in some ways, more stressful on you than it is for the people being in the field. And I experienced that personally quite a bit being the chief. I can't always go out on the calls. Sometimes I need to stay here and try to support what's going on in the field from here. And sometimes being the proper support for that is the chief staying off the radio, staying off the telephone, and just trusting my people out in the that they're going to be able to get through the crisis. And that's very difficult for me to do. So I can imagine how difficult it must be for you. We all have bad calls. And I want to talk to you about reactions to bad calls that are common, not just to dispatchers or first responders. These are common reactions for human beings. It's part of being a human being. And these reactions are temporary. They almost always go away. They don't go away. That's something I'm going to talk about later in the video today about what can happen when these things don't go away after a week or two. But physical reactions, elevated heart rate, and guess what? Elevated blood pressure, blood sugar, upset stomach, nausea, gastrointestinal problems, diarrhea, cramps, sleep difficulties, either sleeping too much or not being able to sleep at all, waking up in the middle of the night, not being able to go back to sleep. In extended stress, and you're going to go for weeks in at a time under this kind of severe stress, it weakens your immune system, it cripples your immune system ability to fight infection, and that means you're just going to be sick more often. Emotional reactions to traumatic stress would be fear and anxiety, sadness and depression, anger and irritability, feeling numb, withdrawn, or disconnected, a lack of involvement or enjoyment in favorite activities, feeling a sense of emptiness or hopelessness about the future. Common cognitive reactions, and cognitive reactions is thought processes, the things that we think, would be difficulty concentrating, difficulty with memory, intrusive memories. And this is one that is better described for me as having re-experiencing the traumatic event like a videotape on a loop where it plays over and over again. And the closer you are to the event, the more frequent the replay is. And it's very, very difficult to control. Recurring dreams or nightmares, those recurring dreams or nightmares can be about the event, or they can be symbolic in nature, but nonetheless stressful. And flashbacks is having these memories just intrude on you unexpectedly. Difficulty communicating, difficulty following complicated instructions, and that all goes with difficulty in concentrating. Then they have a list of behavioral reactions, things that people typically do in these situations. They experience family challenges, physical and emotional conflict at home, substance abuse. That can run anywhere the gamut from alcohol to prescription drugs to illegal drugs. Being overprotective of your family, keeping excessively busy, and keeping excessively busy is a way to avoid and sitting and experiencing these other things that I'm talking about. Isolating yourself from others, and that's a natural thing to do, and that's later I'm going to be asking you to really try to fight that impulse. Being very alert at times, being startled easily, an exaggerated startle response, problems getting to sleep or staying asleep, we talked about that. Avoiding places, activities, or people that bring back memories, feeling like I just don't want to go back there. I don't want to go back to work. I don't want to be in front of that console again, and trying to avoid that. There are faith and spiritual crises that may occur is questioning values and beliefs, a perceived loss of meaning, and directed anger towards God, and cynicism. And again, these things are often difficult to talk about. It can feel like other people might be offended by them, but I assure you that these things are common. Most of these things are going to be experienced by everyone that experiences the kind of stressful, traumatic experiences that you experience as a dispatcher. It's a natural thing. And these things should abate over time. And over time, I mean, a week or two after an event, they'll go away. So we're to the place where, gee, what if they don't go away? And they won't go away if you're not taking good care of yourself. Many cases, I mentioned that it was really important. Isolating is a common impulse, and I really would stress that you fight that impulse to isolate and reach out to people, especially your coworkers that you have good relationships with, that people that really understand what you're going through and what it's like, and sharing your what you're experiencing is. And it's called, psychological terms, it's called normalizing. When you talk to someone else and you find out, gee, I experienced that too, that's what, and it makes you feel like, okay, I'm not crazy, I'm normal, this is okay. And it helps you process it and put it away. I know it's not possible to debrief after really bad calls because you're still busy in there, but try to find the time when things slow down to, to talk about what's happened and how you're feeling about what's happening. And that will increase the odds of things dissipating in a week or two. So what have they done? Well, one of the things that I think is really important to talk to you about is clinical depression. For those of you that don't know, or I can't remember whether I mentioned it on a prior video, but my background prior to coming here was I was a licensed counselor, and I was actually licensed to diagnose mental health disorders, and one of the most common ones was depression. And I found that in my personal experience with first responders, there seems to be a higher incidence of depression and depressive symptoms for people that are drawn to the kind of work that you and I do. So it's for that reason that I want to talk about how depression is diagnosed. And then after I talk about that, I'm going to talk a little bit about how depression is treated. No matter where you go to get help for depression, there's only one set of criteria that's used in this country for diagnosing depression, and that's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Right now, version 4, they're about to come out with version 5. That's not important. What's important is there's one set of criteria, whether you go to a doctor, a counselor, psychiatrist, they're all going to use this criteria. And while it's a little bit more complicated than what I'm going to present to you today, I'm going to present to you the basics. And the basics are this. I'm going to list 9 symptoms. And in order to be diagnosed with depression, you have to meet criteria for 5 out of the 9 for experiencing these things in a 2-week period. And it represents a change from where things were before. So it doesn't have to be exactly 2 weeks. You could be, people often find they've been clinically depressed for years. And other people find, hey, it's only been like this for a month. But just because you've met these things and it's been a long time doesn't mean you don't have depression. It could mean that you've had depression for a really, really long time and it hasn't been addressed. Anyway, let me go through these 9 symptoms. Number 1, depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, is indicated by subjective report, meaning you're reporting on yourself, or observation by others, and others meaning people that are in a position to know about your behavior, like family members. In that could be you appear tearful very often. So depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, for a minimum of that 2-week period. And like I said, it could be years. Let me say this, that the DSM does say, note, in children and adolescents can be irritable mood instead of depressed mood. Let me tell you that my personal experience is that men share that with children and adolescents, and I'm sure that won't be too much of a shock to many of you listening. I speak from experience. I am a man. I express feelings of depression often as irritability, as many, many other men do. So there's nothing very scientific about that. It's been my personal observation through most of my life, and certainly during my clinical years as a licensed counselor. Number 2, diminished interest and pleasure in all or almost all activities most of the day, nearly every day. That you're not happy with what you're doing, and at some point you were, but you're not anymore. 3, significant weight loss or gain while not dieting. That can be a 5% change in body weight, up or down, a substantial increase or decrease in appetite, and that in children, it can be failure to make expected weight gains as they're growing, but we're focusing more on adults here. So 5% of body weight, 100-pound person, 5 pounds, weigh 150, it's 7 pounds, and that happens over, say a month. You've lost or gained 7 pounds in a month. That's a pretty big deal. Something's going on. Insomnia or hypersomnia nearly every day. Not sleeping enough, you're sleeping too much. One extreme or the other. And insomnia can mean you go to sleep right away, where you're waking up at 2, up for 2 hours, going to sleep, waking up at 5. Whatever the pattern is, you're not getting your normal sleep. Fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day. We all know there can be lots and lots of reasons for fatigue and loss of energy, medical reasons, other emotional reasons, but we're looking at this in conjunction with other symptoms. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt nearly every day. And that's not merely guilt about being sick or guilt about being depressed. That's really feeling that you don't have a lot of value as a human being, being really, really profoundly down on yourself. and diminished ability to think or concentrate, or indecisiveness by subjective account, meaning you notice that in yourself or someone close to you notices a difference and lets you know about it. Recurrent thoughts of death, not just fear of dying, recurrent suicidal ideation without a plan or a suicide attempt or a specific plan for committing suicide. And I think the more severe those, it's obvious if you're planning on killing yourself, all bets are off. You need help, and you need help today, right now. But what's very common is people that have suicidal ideation, and suicidal ideation kind of goes like this. You're feeling this weight on you. You're unhappy. You're sad for a long period of time, and you're miserable. And you start wondering if the misery is ever going to go away. And you get thinking, after you've tried to eliminate the sad feelings with a number of different strategies, and none of them have been working, and you start feeling like nothing's ever going to change. And when you start believing that nothing is ever going to change, that's the definition of hopelessness. And often what comes with hopelessness is the idea that the way out and the way to end the suffering is to kill yourself. And the vast majority of people that do commit suicide do it in order to end their suffering. And suicidal ideation is that fleeting thought that, hey, boy, that would make things okay. I wouldn't have to feel like this anymore. Then immediately you may say, well, that's ridiculous. I'm never going to kill myself. But suicidal ideation is that thought that passes like a ship unexpectedly, a ship in the night passing through your mind as a thought. That's suicidal ideation. And that's the ninth and final symptom. So you only need 5 of these 9 to be diagnosed with depression. And again, it's very common amongst people that choose the profession that you and I have chosen. And studies have shown the most effective way to treat depression is a combination of talk therapy with a professional and medication. And medication means an antidepressant. And right now, the most prevalent form of antidepressant is called an SSRI. And if you're interested in medical terminology, that means selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And to put it more simply, it has an effect on brain chemistry that increases the level of a chemical called serotonin in your brain. And it brings that level up to the level that people that aren't suffering from depression has. And it makes it easier for you to make adjustments and to deal with everyday stressors. It's not a happy pill. It's not a pill that makes you feel high or makes you feel happy. It takes often 4 to 6 weeks for these medications to build up to a therapeutic level in your system. And so a lot of people mistakenly think it's some kind of artificial happiness, and it's not. It's a pharmacological aid to improve your blood chemistry, because it's found that most people that suffer from clinical depression have low levels of serotonin in their brain. And this is just correcting something that has gone wrong in the body. It's no different, in my opinion, from having an infection and taking a pill to remove the infection. It's not a sign of weakness. It works miracles for many, many people. That said, it doesn't work 100% of the time for 100% of the people, but the success rate is very high. And there are lots of different kinds of medications, even within the SSRI group, that have different kinds of side effects. The major side effects that SSRIs have, that many of them have, that are problematic for some people, is gaining weight. And another one is their sexual side effects. And there are medications that don't have those side effects. So it's a conversation if one suffering from depression and being treated by a doctor would have with the doctor about what are my options for medication, what are the side effects, and which side effects are most important for me to avoid. Every medication has at least two effects: the desired effect, the thing that the medication does to help, and the side effect or side effects. There's always at least one. So there's the intended effect, and then there's the side effect that sometimes isn't very pleasant. Many people take antidepressants and don't experience any side effects. A lot of people take them, have side effects initially, and the side effects dissipate. So I would say if you listen to me and think, hey, I've got 5 or 6 of these things, get in front of a professional. Call the EAP. Human Resources has the number. I'm sure your manager has the number. But make that phone call. Get in front of a professional. There are other things to rule out that could cause these symptoms. And one of them is very common in North Idaho, and that's a vitamin D deficiency. If you don't have enough vitamin D in your system, one of the effects is depression. And where you get what's the natural source of vitamin D? It's sunlight. And what do we have a profound lack of in 8 months or so of the year is sunlight. So many people take vitamin D supplements, but the only way to know for sure if that's a problem is a blood test. But that's just one thing that can that can be the cause of depression. And that's why you need to go to a professional. That's why you need to see at least a counselor for a diagnosis. You need to see an MD to get medications and to talk about what medications are right for you and to rule out other causes of the things that you're feeling. So again, I'm saying this only because it's so many triggers in our business that can start a bout of depression with someone that's already susceptible to it. And we've all heard of post-traumatic stress disorder. And really what that is the first set of stress reactions that I gave you earlier in the video. When those reactions don't go away over time, and over 2 or 3 weeks after the event, you don't go away over time, many of those things become the foundation for a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. So I'm going to leave you now, and I really hope that I've taught you something about blood pressure and stress reaction, what's normal, how to cope with it, and major depressive disorder, how to spot it in yourself and others, and what to do about it if you or someone you love has some of these symptoms. So I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.